Alright, let's check. Some of the things in here might be useful. Little decorative pieces. If it doesn't go for too much, I guess I'll give this one a shot. Years were spent by Brandi Pants searching through abandoned storage facilities. Then, in 2023, she spent $2,800 on a locker that no one else wanted. It was a corroded door. The stench was awful. Jared himself would have left. But she stayed for some reason. Everything changed when she discovered what was within. Legal documents, bank records, and a collection so unique that appraisers required armed guards. Even AE executives were taken aback by the overall sum. However, Brandi had to make a decision that still bothers her. On May 16, 1980, Brandi Pyanti was born in Harris County, Texas. Growing up there wasn't easy, and her home life was considerably more difficult. She was physically mistreated by her brothers from an early age. This was no light-hearted wrestling. It was relentless, brutal, and terrifying. Later, Brandi added, "I used to get constantly beaten up by my brothers. Since I've learned to strike back, I no longer tolerate rudeness from others." You either broke down or toughened up in that kind of setting. Brandi went with option number 2. Later on, her toughness would serve as both her advantage in the economic world and her protection in life. She was not as courageous on the inside as she appeared to be. Brandi was quiet, reserved, and frequently self-conscious. She was not a social butterfly. She had no idea how to be the boisterous, gregarious child. Rather, she regarded others with what she described as dirty looks. Really, it wasn't intended to frighten them. She was merely defending herself. Perhaps they would leave her alone if she appeared irate or aloof. She couldn't get that look off her mind. Storage Wars enthusiasts would recognize that similar look years later. She even chuckled about it, claiming that attitude was never the reason behind her resting face. It was simply her way of hiding her true level of anxiety. Her early years weren't simply disorderly. It hurt a lot. There was no safety, no warmth in the house. She had to mature quickly because of that kind of emotional vacuum. She no longer readily trusted. She didn't wait to be saved by others. She defended herself by building a wall. Years of living on edge gave me a keen sense of how to read people, spot dishonesty, and see problems before they arise. She was able to survive and eventually triumph thanks to it. She had a significant edge in storage auctions, where you frequently had to make quick decisions and follow your instincts. Those were not talents she picked up from a book. She acquired them from surviving her early years. When her family relocated to California, her life started to alter. The move was unexpected. It was an opportunity to escape some of the suffering, but it was also a new location and culture. California gave her a new beginning. She eventually got to know Jared Schultz. They clicked, and their relationship developed into something more than a romantic one. They began collaborating and delving into the storage auction industry. It was not an easy task. You have to be able to think, act, and stand your ground quickly. It was designed for Brandi. Her background had prepared her for disaster, not because she intended to be. In difficult situations, she remained unflinching. When things became messy, she didn't give up. She took advantage of the pandemonium by leaning into it. Brandi had a great work ethic even before she was discovered by the cameras. There was nothing she could do. She learned to bear her burden early on since she had little money and even less emotional support. She helped out around the house, took on odd projects, and never waited for someone else to do the fixing. She carried that attitude with her. Jared Schultz and Brandi Pyanti met in 1999 while they were employed at a Tustin, California, carpet cleaning business. The manager of sales was Jared. The new employee was named Brandi. Their relationship didn't begin with sparks, and their careers weren't flashy. Technically, Jared was her supervisor, and relationships at work weren't exactly encouraged. One of their common friends even posted notes on Jared's truck at one point, telling him to treat her with more kindness. He acknowledged that he was sometimes rough around the edges. Nor was Brandi instantly convinced of him. As she put it, "He wore me down." He persisted. The combination of chemical odors and carpet stains seemed strange, but it worked. One of the most iconic duos on reality TV would emerge from that quiet beginning. Although they were still a long way from becoming famous, the groundwork had been created in the most improbable place. Nobody could have predicted how beneficial their time spent cleaning carpets would end up becoming. They learned an important lesson: how to find value in things that others throw away, by cleaning up people's trash, going through their neglected belongings, and tackling everyday filth. They entered the world of storage auctions with an advantage thanks to that experience. They tried a local auction after Jared's aunt, who oversaw a public storage facility, recommended it. They weren't a surprise. They have learned to recognize hidden worth after years of sifting through trash. They had an advantage over others since they didn't hesitate to get their hands filthy. Most people observed a heap of trash. Jared and Brandi noticed a riddle to answer and possibly a profit. They took a major gamble before they even became TV stars. They founded Now and Then, a secondhand store in Orange, California, in February 2010. They had a straightforward plan. Purchase inexpensive goods from storage facilities and resell them in the store. Although it wasn't glamorous, it helped them establish their image and pay the expenses. The store was so successful that in March 2013, they built a second branch in Long Beach. They even hosted a lavish opening celebration complete with fans, food, and music. Retail, however, is difficult. Due to difficulties, the Long Beach store closed in 2014. Around 2016, the Orange store quietly closed. The stores were important, though. They demonstrated Brandi and Jared's willingness to take a chance on themselves. And TV producers took notice of that gamble. They were able to secure a place on Storage Wars thanks to those stores and the couple behind them. Their second-hand shops were more than just companies. They served as launch pads. It didn't take Brandi Pianti and Jared Schultz long to stir things up when Storage Wars first aired on television on December 1, 2010. Brandi was not just one of the show's youngest buyers at the age of 30. She was also among the most audacious. The majority of the seasoned bidders were older and more obstinate. However, Brandi and Jared entered fearlessly and without a filter. The regulations were broken by them. They made several mistakes, risked bids, and learned on the job, but they picked things up quickly. And millions of people saw them learn. The Young Guns was more than just a snappy moniker for them. It encapsulated who they were. Fresh blood with a claim to make. In addition to parenting two small children and occasionally running their secondhand store in Orange, California, they were balancing the chaos of auctions. They were relatable because of their combination of pressure and ambition. People supported them since they were attempting to establish a life rather than just win auctions. Jared and Brandi did more than simply alter the show's tone. They contributed to redefining who was capable of success in that world. From the beginning, Brandi was unique. For the cameras, she didn't act theatrical. She was silent. What you observed was what you received. Her irritated glances at Jared, her eye rolls, and her happiness as a risky wager paid off. It was all real. Viewers remarked that Brandi kept things real, whereas other cast members occasionally came across as theatrical or exaggerated. She was immediately likable due to her honesty. She made no pretense of being an authority. She acknowledged her mistakes. She made fun of herself and didn't hesitate to speak up when she saw dangerous behavior, especially from Jared. Her candor gradually increased trust. Because she didn't hide behind a polished image, her fans were able to relate to her. She talked candidly about the difficulties of juggling business, family, and celebrity. It stuck when she said that the show was both a blessing and a curse. It was evident how, despite opening doors, the limelight came with a lot of strain. Even when the cameras stopped recording, she continued to be candid. She kept sharing genuine events from her life on social media. Just Brandi, no filters, no phony grins. Her audience remained faithful because of her candor. Their thrift store was greatly impacted by their storage wars reputation. Now and then was a little secondhand store that relied on local walk-ins prior to the show. However, everything changed when the first season premiered. In the hopes of meeting Brandi and Jared or maybe purchasing something they had seen on TV, fans waited in line to visit the store. The business took off. They had a second site in Long Beach by 2013. It appeared to be a wise decision at first. There was a genuine vibe, and both places were filled, but the excitement was short-lived. Due to difficulties, the Long Beach business had to close in less than a year. The first store also remained operating until the beginning of 2016 before quietly closing. The business's ascent and decline reflected the highs and lows of celebrity on reality TV. Nevertheless, that short-lived retail empire demonstrated a significant finding. Being a reality star wasn't all that Brandi was. She possessed grit, negotiation skills, and business intuition. She maintained her reputation as tough and shrewd even after the stores closed. She was able to switch to new endeavors and remain relevant long after others had faded because to that image. A&E chose to offer Brandi and Jared their own show in 2014. August 12 of that year saw the premiere of Brandi and Jared, Married to the Job. The idea was straightforward. Describe what life was like following the auctions. Fans witnessed them managing their businesses, taking care of their children, and maintaining a relationship under duress. Not all of it was lovely. On TV, they depicted fights, tension, and the messy aspects of being a pair. But it was appealing because of its rawness. This was not scripted nonsense. It was authentic. Nevertheless, there were only 8 episodes in the series. The ratings weren't horrible, but they weren't good enough to keep going. The show gave their story a new dimension, despite only spanning 1 season. It demonstrated that their attractiveness extended beyond auctions and encompassed their ability to deal with life's challenges. Meanwhile, some startling discoveries were made. Jared Schultz and Brandi Paenti spent only $50 on what appeared to be a small, dirty storage unit. However, they struck gold when they forced it open and began to dig. Toys for My Little Pony filled the unit. There are hundreds of them. Others were still sealed in their original boxes, others were uncommon, and some were historic. It became evident that this wasn't just a collection from someone's childhood as they took out figure after figure. This was collector's gold. The appraiser calculated the ultimate value, which was $875. In other words, their $50 wager had yielded almost 17 times the profit. When the episode debuted in season 6, it quickly gained popularity among viewers. Brandi was overjoyed. Jared was skeptical as usual. However, the adult bronies superfans of My Little Pony went crazy. This was no accident. Among the most remarkable flips in the history of storage wars was this one. However, not every discovery brought Brandi joy. She had previously paid $900 on an uninteresting-looking unit 1 season prior. That sensation was short-lived. The locker took an unsettling turn as she and her helper rummaged through the mess. There appeared to be a voodoo collection inside. Animal bones, an antler-adorned skull, carved staffs, odd bundles of chicken bones, and a spooky little person in a chicken cap were all present. Brandi seemed shaken. She declined to sell any of it again. The substance felt dangerous to her. Was the voodoo real? Was it a work of art? The audience was undecided. However, one thing was evident. One of the creepiest lockers ever featured on the show. Then Bry made one of his most dangerous decisions. Unaware of the contents, she paid $2.50 for a unit. The gamble made reasonable when she opened the door, even if it was a massive risk. Professional screen printing supplies, including screens, presses, dryers, and even an exposure unit, were all inside the locker. Everything required to launch a printing company was there. The equipment was appraised at $5,000 after being examined by an expert. In addition to earning Brandi a healthy profit, the discovery demonstrated the surprising and lucrative potential of these storage facilities. There was more to it than resale. It has to do with possibilities. She repeated it in 2014. She set down $1,250 on what appeared to be nothing but rubbish in another locker. Things became exciting as they worked through the call, even though Jared wasn't sure about it. Personal treasures, wall decorations, and paintings were concealed beneath heaps of antiques. Then they discovered the reward, a high-end paint spraying equipment valued at over $3,000. The total estimated value of the locker was $3,500. It served as a reminder that hidden gems aren't always as bright as they seem. Sometimes the only person who can see it is someone with Bry's eye. However, nothing surpassed the early victory that made all the difference. No one else seemed interested in the locker, so Brandi and Jared paid $1,700 for it. They were taken aback when they opened it. It was filled with rare treasures, action figures, and vintage toys that were all in great condition. The quality was unparalleled, and the collection was enormous. After everything had been evaluated, the whole amount was $12,800. One of the largest victories in Storage Wars history resulted from that one locker. In December 2012, the Storage Wars saga took a significant turn. One of the show's most well-known characters, David Hester, filed a startling lawsuit that revealed what he said was a network of dishonesty behind the scenes. He was more than just the person who shouted, "Yope," during bidding wars. It was him who now accused the entire show of being phony. His lawsuit claimed that producers weren't taking any chances. They were packing plant materials into storage units. Items like a stack of newspapers announcing Elvis Presley's death or a BMW Mini, all of which are intended to heighten the drama and increase viewership. Hester did not remain silent. He proceeded directly to the Los Angeles Superior Court and requested damages over $750,000. He asserted that the production team had breached their contract and broken company laws, and that he was sacked for raising his voice. He even suggested that the producers might have violated the Communications Act of 1934's federal broadcasting regulations, which forbid contest manipulation. The harm was already done, but the network A&E was forced to make a public statement. The audience was left wondering if any of their favorite locker reveals were ever true. It was difficult to disregard the evidence when it was presented. The locker planting wasn't a rumor, as evidenced by the abundance of communications, documents, and even reimbursement checks that surfaced. According to set sources, producers openly stuffed things into the lockers, often in the view of the actors and crew, particularly during the first season. It was an unsettlingly obvious method. Members of the cast would